Hey everybody, Nick here, and today we're going to do a little disassembly and maintenance on this little guy right here. This is the Herman Knives Ishtar. Okay, before we go any further, looks like centering is very slightly favoring the show side, which is good to know. And then a couple of quick provisos. To start with, these screws in the back here are going to actually make my life difficult because they are actually positioned underneath the clip. So that means I'm going to need to remove the clip in order to get to those. And so there is that. However, aside from that, one major difference between this guy and prior versions is that this actually has a Torx-style pivot. I don't know exactly what size it is. Let me pull out my bit set here. And by the way, if you're curious about any of the tools I'm using on this or any other disassembly, go to nickshabazz.com/tools. This appears to be... yeah, that's a T20 size bit. However, kindly, the maker actually includes with it still a tool, a custom-made little tool for it, which I have to respect, right? You know, it's a standard bit size, but he's giving you the tool. You know what? I'm actually going to go on ahead, though, and use the real deal driver, just because it's a little easier not to scratch the Timascus when you're using an actual driver. Right, when you can just rotate things sort of as they naturally want to. Although, actually, I shouldn't take the pivot all the way out until I get this back part undone. The other thing that I got to keep in mind with this particular maker is that, at least historically speaking, the knives have had loose bearings, which is why I'm working on this mat here, which you'll see has a great wall around all the sides, which makes this guy much easier to use. Okay, just as I thought, this clip screw is actually the same screw that goes all the way through the body there. So I need to make sure that comes out. That'll be the last screw in, come to think of it. All right, so then we'll go ahead and... this appears to be threaded all the way through the back spacer. Is that true? Either way, it's a big old screw. So that is the bottommost screw there. Then the clip, I don't want to just rotate out of the way because it's probably keyed. So I'll just take this and, oh, one more rotation or so should get me solid. But anyways, there we go. Nicely contoured on the bottom there. Okay, now I can take out these guys in the back here. And it's worth noting that as I am doing all this, I'm keeping the screws in the order that they came off the knife in little, well, basically wells up there at the top of the mat. Should make things a little easier. And now... let's pull this out. Okay. Now at this point, I need to go in and finish off the pivot. And there goes my back spacer, and that's completely fine. I don't need a T10 bit at all. I just need my T20 here. And we see here that the pivot is not free spinning by virtue of this bit in the back here. Nice and gently lift everything apart here. Come on. Come on. Okay, that's a little dangerous. Maybe I should have undone the pivot all the way. There we go. Okay, beautiful. That was just a little awkward because the pivot is actually a little longer than I expected. Okay, what we just had there was the tension of the lock bar, which, by the way, is quite considerable. Suddenly tossing the blade up off of it there. Okay, so what we see here, aside from the beautiful Damacor blade and whatnot, as well as the rest of it, is wow, some skeletonization there, a hidden screw for the inside of the inlay, which is actually an improvement from the Vespatilio I had, where it was the screw was external to it. And now, let me go on ahead. I'm just going to wipe off the blade while it's sitting right here in front of me. Clean that off using some rubbing alcohol here. We can see here that Mr. Herman has masked off the detent ball path, leaving that portion of the blade completely unetched. Meaning that as he, the way that you develop this Damascus pattern is by putting a little bit of putting this into an acid of some variety. And he was able to basically prevent that acid from contacting this portion such that the knife would be a lot smoother on the open and close. And it shows, because the knife is exceptionally smooth on the open and close. Okay, now we enter the danger zone, so to speak. And I I'm going to take this bearing out. Now, these little individual bearings are capable of being removed, or capable of falling out, basically. My goal is to not have them do that, but I need to be considerate of the fact that they're going to wanna, right? And so what I'm doing here is just cleaning this off. And, well, actually, that's gone pretty smoothly so far, so I can't really argue with that. All right, so that's good. That was easy enough. I'm going to go ahead and pop the pivot through on the other side. There's not an orientation of it, just some nice machining there. This is a nice knife, by the way. I mean, chances are you'd already figured that out, but oh boy, this is really good. Like, Herman has done some really good stuff before, but damn, you sort of get the feeling. This is going to sound very pretentious, and it's going to sound like I'm trying to place myself above makers. But thing is, at some level, you very often, as a reviewer and as somebody who is just even a fan of a brand, you'll get a feeling of the trajectory of a maker, whether they are, staying largely the same, piece by piece, they're doing the same things over and over again, or whether there's a washer underneath there for the bearings to run against. Keep that in mind. Actually, I'm not going to keep it in mind. I'm just going to clean it and then reinsert it. That seems easier. But anyways, you get a sense after a while of the of a maker's trajectory. Whether they're constantly improving, whether they're staying about consistent. What the deal is there. And Herman is a maker who started off very, very good. The first knife I handled by Herman, the Sting, was just great. He makes really nice knives, but boy, I also feel like he's, honing his craft a little bit more and just making little tiny quality of life tweaks just to make things better still. I think I'm probably a fanboy at this point. I gotta be, okay, hold on there. We're losing balls. All right. So, one ball. Okay, good. I got him. One of them is here. The other one is there. Okay. This is the danger, as always. And this is one thing I kind of wish Herman would fix. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and just drop these back into place using a pair of tweezers. Just touch those in. And then be careful such that I don't lose any further ballation. Okay. So, let's go ahead and put this in place. Now let me find my pivot. Here it is. Drop this in. Well, press it in, I suppose. Good. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this guy back together with some 10-weight nano oil. Should make for a nice quick action. Okay, now I lift this up and I just drop this whole thing down into position. And I'm using the oil tip here to rotate it, not so much to, but that should distribute the oil nicely. Okay, next step is going to be, and I have the bearing race in there, and I had the grooves properly facing up, so that's good. Anyways, Herman has just kept getting better and better, and I appreciate it very much, just because, honestly, it's nice to see. I love seeing another really great maker in the world. And, he's competing with some of the great makers right now. He's upper echelon. So I appreciate that very much. And disassembly is actually kind of the area that Herman, at least historically, has been weakest. Just in that they tend to be a little bit of a pain with things like loose bearings, things like... what was the other thing I usually complain about with this? I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of thread locker. A little bit of oil onto the detent ball path there. And then I'll put a little into the pivot hole itself. Now I drop this whole thing on there. Okay, put that down. So this lock bar is able to move through because the stop pin isn't installed. That's your problem. Found the trouble. Once I put this in place, then what you're going to see is that the blade stops. Oh, actually, interesting. Oh, because there must be a little bit of wobble there. Whatever. It actually makes my life a little easier at the moment because that allows me to reinstall the bearings right here with the without dealing with the pressure of the lock bar, which is good. And then I've cleaned that up. let me go on ahead and just, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to drop this washer down onto the bearings specifically. And again, note that there are rings on this side and not particularly on this one. That means that that's the surface the bearings rub against. Okay, now what I'm going to do, there we go, is slip that through there. This goes back here, and I'm just putting the backspacer in position so that I know that I'm not out of position, so to speak. I want things to be in parallel. Look at the internal milling on this, by the way. I want to be in parallel as I do this. Actually, for the moment, I'll just use that to hold it down by putting the blade at a slight angle. There we go. We are engaged with both the stop pin and the pivot, I believe. Yeah, we are. Okay, good. Now, again, I'm going to just put the backspacer in here to allow me to press down parallel. I'm going to use some thread locker here. This is some Blue 242 thread locker in a stick. I'm going to go on ahead and drop this into position here. And now, I use my T20 to just rotate the pivot home. My goal here is not to get that fully tightened up, but my goal here is to get that to a point where it is, well, close enough. Okay, there we go. Now, what we have in position here is we've got the pivot in place, right? And roughly, it needs to be retightened still. But now I need to get the backspacer in working condition here. And the way I need to do that, probably going to want to push the blade out a little bit. I don't need to do anything to the Damascus here. I will go on ahead, though, actually, and use, this is actually some glasses cleaner. That's not a recommendation of a brand. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use that, and I'm just going to wipe off the Damascus, especially on the inside. Just because that'll make the colors pop just a little bit more. But now I'm going to go on ahead and drop this into position here. And I'll do the same thing right on there, because it's just easier to do that now than later. Okay. Now what I do is I grab the appropriate screw. And I'm going to go on ahead and I'm going to put just a little tiny bit of thread lock on here. Beautiful. And now it's just a question of moving this backspacer around. And I'm going to use this little... Well, actually, I'm doing this dumbly. What I actually want to do is hold this part out. Then I'll be able to kind of control this a little bit better as I spear the... There we go. So now that's in position with 1 degree of freedom locked down, so to speak. I'll go on ahead and I'll just get it to the point where it's engaging with the threads to make sure that screw ain't going anywhere. Beautiful. Next up is this screw here. Same basic algorithm. And drop this into position, and I might have to play around with the backspacer, or maybe I don't, to get everything in alignment. And again, just tighten these down. Okay, now this comes a point where things get slightly awkward in terms of order of operations. This last screw, the clip screw, needs to go in place with the clip. But I don't want to tighten everything down until the pivot's in, a better tightness. So now I'm going to use the pivot here and just tighten that up, get this in good position. We are dead on center. How's my action? My action is good. I feel like there is a piece of dust or something like that in the detent ball path, but the action is still an order of magnitude smoother than pretty much everything else, so no real complaint there. Let me go on ahead, and now that the pivot is in good tight... Oh, and I should check for play while I'm here. No play, yeah. I'm going to go on ahead and loosen these up just a touch. Now retighten. Loosen, retighten. Okay, the blade is Where are we at here? Can I retighten this? Can I tighten this pivot just a touch more? I can. Yeah. That will do. If I were being particularly retentive, what I might actually do is go in there and clean that particular bit of whatever it is. You can kind of hear. There's something in there, and I bet it's like a little, probably like an eyelash or something like that, right? But the thing is, that's going to get eaten alive over time yeah, it's already disappearing, so I'm not freaking out about that. Okay, now the final step is actually going to be to put in the clip again. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, again, use a little bit of thread locker on a stick here. A little more than that. Let's try this on for size. Beautiful. This is actually going... I shouldn't say that until we're over here. What I was going to say, what an idiot would say is, oh, this is going pretty smooth. But so far it really is, right? I think not having the spaces around the side of the back spacer makes a major difference in terms of the smoothness of this whole affair. Okay, make sure that's in alignment. It is beautiful. Now, finally, I drop this screw in place. Yeah. It's always difficult as a reviewer to manage the tension between being a fanboy and being well, I almost said objective there, but that's not a thing. Being a reviewer and taking seriously your attempts to minimize your own bias. I didn't say success, I said attempt. One never minimizes bias, it's just you understand it, right? But it's always difficult to manage that tension, because at this point, I am very, very impressed with Herman, and with other brands as well. But, yeah, this is good. This is real good. And this knife is the best thing that I've handled by Herman as well. There were constant improvements. And so, you know, but at the same time, I also want to be, you know, I don't want to pull any punches or anything like that. I think you'll see in the review. I don't plan to, but nonetheless, that's a tough tension to navigate. Going to go ahead and wipe off the Damascus here with a little bit of glasses cleaner. Again, beautiful. And wipe off the clip and the back spacer here. And what we see here is this knife is done, is clean. Here, I'll wipe off the blade as well. Very deep etch on the Damacor blade here. Yeah. Whatever was in the works is already has already disappeared, I was just saying. And now that it has, whew, yikes. Okay, there we go. Hope this has been interesting to you. That was actually a little easier and quicker than I expected, which I will definitely take. And, yeah, hope this has been interesting to you. Have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.